Hello everyone, welcome to another interesting and informative session of the Analyst brought to you by Vajiram and Ravi. In today's session, we will discuss 9 important articles as featured in the Hindu and Indian Express for your comprehensive understanding of the current affairs explained to you in the easiest language possible. The topics are as follows. In the first topic, in the wake of the increasing cases of foot and mouth diseases in the country, we are going to comprehensively analyze the livestock sector. In the second topic, we are going to have a holistic discussion on the biofuel policy, which is key to achieving the Panch Amrit target which we have set for ourselves. Then in the third topic, in the light of the recent statements which has been made by the Chief Justice of India, we are going to look into the issues which are surrounding the judiciary. Followed by the fourth topic, where we'll ponder upon a question that why it is necessary to achieve self-sufficiency in chip making. And finally, in the fifth topic, we are going to look into the recent discoveries which has been made for the treatment of cancer. Towards the end, there will be news snippets to help you excel in the prelims examination as well, so stay tuned. The government plans to establish foot and mouth disease free zones in 8 states to boost export of animal products. In the light of this, we are going to cover very holistically the livestock sector, which forms an important component of your GS3 paper under the theme of economics of animal rearing. Keep this in mind that livestock rearing is one of the most important economic activities, specifically in the rural areas, because it contributes significantly to the income of small and marginal farmers as well as landless households. And that is why the government is consistently trying to improve this particular sector by bringing several developments. In the backdrop of this, let's first try to understand the status of livestock sector in our country as per the 20th livestock census which was released in 2019. Here, note down 2 important things first. The first is that the first livestock census was conducted in the year of 1990, the same year when the Montague-Chelmsford reforms were passed, and it is conducted 5 years basis or in the gap period. Now, as per the 20th livestock census, the total population of livestock in our country stands at 536.7 million. And remember that 95% of this population of livestock lies in the rural areas. Now, out of this 536.7 million population, 36% of them are cattle, 20% of them are buffalo, 13.8% of them are sheep, 27% of them are goat, and 1.6% is pig population. Now, when we have learned this, also remember that the cattle population, which comprises of 36%, out of this 26% of the cattle population is actually considered to be constitute of exotic breed or the foreign breeds. Now, which state has the highest livestock population? That is Uttar Pradesh, followed closely by Rajasthan, then Madhya Pradesh, West Bengal and Bihar. These are the 5 states in decreasing order with the highest populations of livestock in the country. Now, when we have understood the status of it, the extent of it, now let's try to dwell into the economics of the livestock sector. You guys might already be knowing that India is the largest producer of milk by producing 25% of the global production. At the same time, we are also the largest producer of buffalo meat, second largest producer of goat meat, third largest producer of eggs, and our export from this particular sector in the fiscal year of 23 constituted of around $134 million, and we are currently exporting to 57 countries. Now, if we specifically talk about the poultry industry, it has the market valuation of $30.4 billion. And it registered the compounded annual growth rate of 8.1% expected from the year of 2024 to 32. And this whole sector of this meat production, it registered an annual growth of 5.6%, and considering the importance of this particular sector, the government has allowed 100% foreign direct investment through the automatic route in this particular sector. So the numbers obviously seems staggering. But even despite such robust numbers, there are several challenges which is actually plaguing this particular sector. The first is obviously the impact of climate change induced extreme weather events, such as for example the heat waves, about which you guys have frequently read in the months of April and May. So if we look at the report from the month of May itself, May 2024, which was published in the Hindu, it shows that how the cow mortality has reached an all-time high with the thermal stress. Now, see what happens that this, let's say if you are talking specifically about the cattle. So an adult cow, it requires 50 liters of water a day to sustain or for its sustainable development. Now, when such extreme weather events are taking place, let's say for example flash droughts or heat stress, obviously that will transpire to what? It will lead to acute water shortage. So obviously in most of the water stressed districts in the country, the farmers, they are unable to meet this requirement of 50 liters a day or even half of that. So ultimately that leads to what? The dehydration and loss of immunity of these cattle. So obviously they are becoming much more disease prone. The second is that a large number of farmers in our country, they actually depend on monsoon rainfall for the irrigation purposes. Almost 60% if you look at the recent data which has been provided by Indian Council of Agriculture Research. So if they are depending on the monsoon and such water stress or heat stress takes place, let's say flash drought has occurred, obviously that will lead to what? The less water availability for irrigation purposes, leading to crop shortage. The crop shortage ultimately transpires to what? The fodder shortage, which we can see from the Indian Council of Agriculture Research data that how there is a huge fodder shortage which is taking place, and by the year of 2025 it is expected that there will be 21% dry fodder shortage, 40% shortage in green fodder and 38% in the various concentrates fodders. Now when we have understood these two issues, the another major issue is the issue with industrial production. So imagine yourself as a poultry industry. What you will require is you will try to enhance your profitability. And how you can do that? By obviously increasing the number of livestock in a very small area. So obviously you will try to reduce down your production cost. For that, a cramming of livestock in the battery cages takes place. Right? Let's say there are 5,000 chickens in a very small area. And what this will lead to? This leads to high level of waste generation as well as methane production. Keep this in mind that as per the very recent report which was released by United Nations Environment Program, if we take a time period of 20 years, in these 20 years, methane, which has a short lifespan of only 12 years, but in this 20 years time, this same methane or CH4, it traps 84 times more heat than carbon dioxide. Then to further increase your profitability, what you will actually venture into, that you start giving certain kind of antibiotics to these livestock, which basically act as prophylactic agents or as a promoter, the growth promoter, the growth hormones, a kind of allegation which you also hear about the KFC chickens. So now because of these antibiotics, the large scale use of it, what it has led to is the development of antimicrobial resistance in these livestock. So let's say now if they are even falling sick for a small disease, the antibiotics which are being provided to them, they are not working upon them. Also such antibiotics like diclofenac, you guys might have heard, which has led to the decline in the population of vulture. Then because of such cramming of spaces and high scale use of antimicrobial resistance, ultimately, or this waste which is being generated by them and discarding of that very near to the human habitation, it ultimately leads to the emergence of zoonotic diseases. And if we follow the One Health concept, these zoonotic diseases are being transferred to us, impacting our health. Zoonotic diseases such as, for example, COVID-19 or avian influenza, H5N1, your Ebola, Nipah virus, your rabies, etc. So it is impacting our health as well. Now let's say that there is a new entrant in the market, and this new entrant or a small company says that I want to change all these activities. Then this small company, it faces entry barrier for smaller firms, such as for example large scale cooperative farming which takes place, or for example the commercial farming or contract based farming. Now where the land poolings of various farmers or poultry farmers are done. The second barrier which I am going to face is obviously the high initial capital cost which is required, which I am unable to meet. Or for example, various kinds of trade barriers which exist for me, where I do not have access to the larger infrastructure or the larger market. Then there exist certain infrastructural challenges as well. If we talk specifically about the health of these animals, health of these livestock, the first major challenge which they face is the presence of quacks or untrained medical professional workers, especially in the animal sector. So obviously this untrained medical workers, that will actually lead to the high scale uses of these antibiotics as well, prescription of that. The second is that, let's say if there is a presence of these quacks, obviously that will transpire to what? The increasing cases of animal disease which are not being treated accurately. The animal disease, such as for example the one in the news, that is foot and mouth disease or your lumpy skin disease, all of these are impacting the animals. Then let's say as a farmer, if my animals are facing these kind of disease and there is a lot of kind of disease which are impacting my animals and ultimately declining the productivity, what I can be actually incurring is the huge economic loss as a farmer. So for example, this foot and mouth disease itself leads to the loss of 12,000 to 14,000 crore rupees annually. Now, if I am facing such an economic distress, what I can do, to stay afloat my business, I can actually go and refer to some financial institutions for their credit. But this particular sector, it actually faces inadequate availability of formal credit. For example, if we just look at the budget, the data which has been provided this year, it showcases that the share of formal credit of all agriculture sector and of that which actually leads to this, poultry sector, that is only 4% of the total credit. At the same time, only 6% of the total livestock industries, they are actually under some kind of insurance coverage. The next issue is the existence of informal market channels. So there are a lot of informal intermediaries in this particular sector and they work at a micro level, at such micro level that often they fall out of ambit of any government actions or rules. For example, if you are talking about the milk production, so 20% of the total milk which is being produced in our country, only 20% of that is actually being procured by any kind of private company or dairy cooperatives. The rest is actually being channelized by these informal market channels. The next is the issues with the breed improvement. So obviously there is a huge shortage of scientific knowledge among the farmers related to this scientific breeding process, and that is actually reflected from only 24.5% of artificial insemination which is done. So out of all 100 cattle, only 24.5 of them actually procures artificial insemination. Then all of these issues are further compounded and aggravated by the neglect by the government of India. For example, if you look at the funds which are allotted to this particular sector, that forms only 12% of the total fund which has been given to agriculture and allied sector in your budget 2024. So obviously there exists a huge neglect toward this sector. So what are the steps which has been taken by the government of India so far to actually ensure the sustainability of this livestock sector which has a huge economic potential? The first is that under the livestock health and disease control program, various motor veterinary units has been created for the doorstep services. Then under the One Health vision of World Health Organization, it actually led to the banning of 10 or 12 antibiotics which were actually impacting the poultry sector specifically. Then there was an MK Jain committee which was formed, and it suggested that these kind of farmers, the livestock farmers, they shall be provided with much more access to formal credit. And how we can do that? By creation of a unified portal. Then the government has also created the disease surveillance and training centers at the ground level or village level specifically. Then the Central Pollution Control Board has actually classified the polluting industries. So it has said that, let's say for example, if there are 5,000 birds in any particular poultry industry, then it will be considered under falling in the category of a polluting industry. So that will require a no objection certificate from the state pollution control boards. Then under the prevention of cruelty to animals, such minute scale confinement of the animals, it actually bound to any criminal practices, and thus there is a huge penalty for that as well. Also, the 209th Law Commission report had recommended that we shall actually adopt international best practices for which kind of antibiotics to use, which kind of facilities to create, how to improve our logistic infrastructure. In this regard, the government has also launched several schemes under the Ministry of Animal Husbandry. The first scheme is the National Livestock Mission, under which we are actually trying to improve the entrepreneurship among this particular section. We are trying to adopt scientific breeding practices. Second is the Animal Husbandry Infrastructure Fund. Under AIDF, what we are trying to do? We are providing these livestock farmers 3% interest subvention. If you are going to take any loan, 3% of the interest will be provided by the government. At the same time, the government is also going to provide insurance coverage to 25% of your borrowing. So let's say you borrowed 100 rupees, the government is saying, don't worry, I will return 25 rupees, you return only 75. The third is the National Animal Disease Control Program, under which we have taken an ambitious target to vaccinate 100% of the cattle, buffalo, sheep, goat and pig population from this foot and mouth disease by the year of 2024 itself. Then there is a registration of breeds which are being done now in the official gazette by the Department of Agriculture and Research Education. And the government is also trying to provide various kind of supports to the dairy cooperatives and the farmer producer organizations, about which we discussed in the last lecture. So remember the issues which are plaguing this sector. Remember the steps which has been taken, and on the basis of this, try to solve this particular question. If possible, comment your answer in the comment box and we move forward to the next news. The Department of Biotechnology is planning to set up enzyme manufacturing facility to bolster the ethanol production in the country. This ethanol production, which forms an important component of the National Biofuel Policy, which is an important part of your GS3 paper under the theme of growth and development and environment conservation. So let's start from the very basic by asking ourselves a simple question: what is biofuel? Biofuel is basically a type of fuel which is generated from the fermentation of biomass. Biomass, which can be your agriculture residue, or for example animal waste, or for example algae material. Now, as this feedstock, it is vastly available to us and it is easily replenishable, we consider this biofuel to be the source of renewable energy in contrast to the fossil fuels such as for example petroleum, coal, natural gas, because for this we have got limited resources. Now, as per the data provided by the International Energy Agency, India is 87% import dependent on the crude oil. So imagine a scenario where we can actually just replace this crude oil by the production of biofuel. Imagine the savings which we can do. Imagine our enhanced balance of payment. That is why the government is putting so much of impetus on this biofuel. The biofuel has various types. For example, if we just use this biomass and convert it into liquid or gas. So if we use the process of fermentation, it can lead to the production of ethanol. Or if we use the deconstruction process by applying high temperature with the application of processes, for example gasification, it can lead to hydrogen gas. With application of pyrolysis, we can get biochar. With hydrothermal liquefaction, we can reach to bio oil or various kind of biodiesel or petrol. Or with under the low temperature discussion, by application of hydrolysis, we can reach to various kind of biofuels as well. In this particular discussion, because of the constraint of time, we are going to put our impetus on the ethanol. Ethanol is basically ethyl alcohol. The ethyl alcohol which is basically produced through the process of fermentation. In fermentation, we are using what? We are using fungi, bacteria, etc. to degrade this wood, agricultural waste, animal waste, municipal waste, etc. So when we have understood the biofuel and the various types, let's look at the 4 generations of biofuels. In the first generation of biofuel, we actually use the kind of crops which are actually edible by the humans, such as for example soybean, sugarcane and maize. Why the first generation biofuel was actually referred to earlier? Because of its simpler process, cost efficiency, and because of the requirement of no intensive pre-treatment. However, imagine that if the area which we were actually using for the crop production, now first of all we are diverting it towards the biofuel crops. At the same time, if we are using these crops the staple crops for the biofuel production, it will obviously impact our food security. So obviously it will lead to food versus fuel conflict. That is why the government started putting impetus on the second generation of biofuels, where we use the crops which are non-edible by the humans or unsuitable for human consumption, such as, for example, lignocellulosic biomass and other waste streams, including industrial waste. In the third generation of biofuels, we actually use algae material and your cyanobacteria. However, it requires a lot of economic cost. It is not economically viable for us right now. The fourth generation of biofuels, it actually involves the genetic engineering process. Through this genetic engineering, or through the process of hydrolysis and all, we convert certain kind of biomass to use it as a biofuel. However, obviously we can just guess that this requires high level of scientific and technological updation and cost. So that is why the government is actually putting a lot of impetus on the second generation biofuels. Now there arises a question that, okay, we are putting so much of impetus, but what does this biofuel has to offer to us? The first advantage is that it obviously will get the freedom from the fossil fuels. The reason being that because if we add this biofuel into the fossil fuels which we are using, let's say we blend the ethanol with petrol, then it increases the octane number of engine to 108.5 as per the various research. To understand this, simply just make this understanding in your mind that if the octane number is increasing, then the knocking number of engine that actually comes down, and thus the efficiency of the engine that actually increases. The second is obviously that will lead to reduction of pollutants. The pollutants such as, for example, nitrogen oxide, sulfur oxide, carbon monoxide, various kind of hydrocarbons, as well as your particulate matter of 2.5 and 10, which we discussed in the last lecture. Then it will lead to utilization of solid waste. So obviously the municipal solid waste which we are generating and discarding, creating the garbage mountains of Gazipur, that we can actually utilize for the generation of fuels. Thus it works upon the waste to wealth generation principle. The third is that obviously it will lead to enhanced energy security, because if we are just replacing the imported crude oil with biofuels, so obviously we do not require to import fuels from the various sources. So that will obviously lead to what? That will enhance our energy security, because now as a country will become immune to any kind of supply chain disruptions which is being caused by geopolitical tension. If you guys can recall the concept of imported inflation which we discussed in the last lecture. Then obviously it will increase our balance of payment, because now we are importing less crude oil, so our exports in the number in comparison will obviously increase. And it will also lead to the creation of rural employment, as it was envisaged by the National Biofuel Policy, that will create employment generation in the rural areas through your biorefineries, plant operations, village level entrepreneurship and supply chain management. So now with this we can also achieve the objective of Dalwai Committee, which envisaged to double down the farmers' income. At the same time, it will lead to huge infrastructure investment in rural areas and generation of environment-friendly fuel and cleaner environment as well. Thus, the government took a lot of steps. First of it was launching the National Biofuel Policy of 2018, under which we have already achieved the target of 10% ethanol blending by 2022. So let's say if you are taking 1 liter of oil in comparison, 90% of that is petrol and 10% of that is bioethanol or ethyl alcohol. Now we have set for ourselves an advanced target of 20% ethanol blending by the year of 2025. Keep this in mind because it will come handy in the later discussion. Then the oil marketing companies, they were directed to procure ethanol from the domestic sources and blend ethanol at various terminals. The third was that the government actually notified the administered price for ethanol now, and it also said that now ethanol production, distribution, that can have a free movement across the country under the Industries Act of 1951. Then the government also incentivized the creation, the designing and production of flex fuel engines under the production linked incentive scheme. What is a flex fuel engine? It is basically an engine which can work upon both either ethanol or petrol or the mixture of that as well. Then government also created Sugar Development Fund, for ethanol projects, and it said that various kind of crop residues, such as for example sugarcane, cassava, corn, broken rice, wheat, potato, etc., all of this can be used to generate biofuel. On the basis of this simple discussion, try to solve this particular question which students at that time found really difficult. Comment your answer in the comment box. Let's see who got it right, and we move forward to the other steps which has been taken by the government. The first is the sustainable alternative towards affordable transportation, under which the government has directed the oil manufacturing companies that they shall mandatorily procure this biofuel or biogas which is being generated by the CBG production companies. Then the government launched Jeevan Yojana, under which it is actually financing various kind of integrated bioethanol projects across the country. Then in the budget of 2023, the government came with Gobar Dhan scheme, where we are just trying to create such waste to wealth generation, or for example from the agricultural residues, the cow dungs, we are trying to create various kind of bioethanol production units at the village level, at the minutest level. Then there is a repurpose used cooking oil scheme by the Food Safety Standard Authority of India, where the idea is that the kind of cooking fuel which has already been used as an oil in various kind of value chains, we can repurpose it and utilize it to create biofuels. The fourth is your E100 project. So under E100 project, we are trying to create various kind of production and distribution units for bioethanol across the country. And finally, there is the ethanol export policy, which was recently designated by the Director General of Foreign Trade, under which the export of bioethanol now has been promoted under the special economic zones as well. But despite these steps which the government has taken, there are several key challenges which persist. First is the limited capacity of production which we have achieved till now. For example, the total contracted quantity of the bioethanol which was produced for fiscal year 23, it stood at 391 crore liters. Keep this in mind that as highlighted by the today's news article, the Niti Aayog has said that by the year of 2025, the production capacity which we shall reach is 13.5 billion liters. So now the total envisaged target which has been set for these companies, we have achieved only 9.45% of that. So we have a limited capacity of ethanol production. The second is the limited utilization of resources. So for example, India is the second largest producer of sugarcane. So we have huge potential to grow this crop and use it to produce biofuels. However, the ethanol which has been derived from sugarcane molasses is only 8% of the total blending targets which we are achieving. Third is the supply chain issues. So let's say if you are talking about sugarcane, there are three largest producers of sugarcane and ethanol in our country. They are Uttar Pradesh, Maharashtra and Karnataka. So they are ethanol surplus states. Now, remember this, that this ethanol, it has a hygroscopic nature. So when we are talking about blending of this ethanol with petrol, that has to be done at the penultimate level, right near to the oil marketing companies at their spots, right before that. So for this purpose, this ethanol has to be transported from ethanol surplus states to ethanol deficit states. Now when we are doing this transportation, obviously there is a cost which is involved. So the cost of biofuel is increasing, and at the same time for this transportation purposes, obviously we are using what? The fossil fuels. So the whole purpose of biofuel as a renewable energy is lost. Now there is also an impact of climate change. So as we are seeing that the feedstock demand for this biofuel as per the International Energy Agency, that is going to significantly increase, reaching to 11.7 million tons per year. But as we were discussing in the case of livestock sector, the same issue will apply here as well. So because of the extreme weather events which is taking place, what will happen? The monsoon rainfall will decline. Because of decline in rainfall, the farmers which are dependent on irrigation, on rainfall, so obviously the crop productivity will decline at all. So our fuel security through this biofuel will decline as well. At the same time, when we are using this sugarcane to produce biofuel, remember that sugarcane is a highly water intensive crop. So obviously that can lead to large scale groundwater depletion, or already India being or extracting 25% of the groundwater. Then obviously it can create food security challenges as well, because now the farmers, because they are getting incentive for producing biofuel on their agricultural land, they will start producing this biofuel crops instead of staple crops. Then there is a issue of shifting ethanol potency percentage by the government of India, because what happened that when you said that we are going to achieve 10% of blending target, these automobile manufacturers had to just kind of reshift their engine design to adjust to this 10% ethanol blending. The moment we achieve that, you said that now we are going to achieve 20% in the next 3 years. So how the automobile manufacturers are going to accustom their engines to this requirement? So there is an issue of shifting ethanol potency percentage by the government as well. Now the article today highlights that there are certain recent steps which has been taken by the government. What are they? So the Department of Biotechnology is going to establish an enzyme manufacturing facility in our country. The reason being that there is an enzyme which is required to convert this agricultural residue into the biomass, or the biomass which we utilize for biofuel production. This enzyme is derived from a fungus which is called as Penicillium funiculosum. Till now, we were actually import dependent on it, and that is why the Department of Biotechnology is saying that we will start creating this enzyme in our country itself. Also, if you guys can recall, very recently we have launched the Bio E3 policy, which has set up biofoundries to develop feedstocks and catalysts to create biofuels. Further technologies sharing can also be achieved under the Global Biofuel Alliance. The Global Biofuel Alliance, which was actually launched under the G20 presidency last year, which took place in New Delhi. Under that, obviously because India is going to contribute to 25% of global energy demand. So we can see that the importance which biofuel production has for our energy security and also to achieve our Panch Amrit target. So keep these suggestions in your mind, the steps which has been taken and the issues, and try to attempt this particular question. We move forward to the next news. The Chief Justice of India has highlighted the recent reforms which has been taken in the Indian judiciary, and has also given a call for the legal education in the regional languages. In the backdrop of this, we are going to understand the various issues which are pertaining to judiciary, forming an important component of your GS2 paper. To understand that, let's first try to understand the structure of judiciary in our country. So unlike the American Constitution, the Indian Constitution adopted for an integrated judiciary, under which the Supreme Court is at the top under Article 124 of the Constitution, followed by the High Courts at the various state levels under Article 214 of the Constitutions, and below that there is a chain of district courts and additional district court judges under your Article 233 to 237 of the Constitution. Remember that this single system enforces both the central and state laws across the country. Now, this judiciary, it is responsible for enforcing your fundamental right, for protecting your rights, as well as providing you the law of natural justice in the country. However, the question is that, is our judiciary an inch perfect system? Absolutely not. Rather, it is actually grappled with various kind of loopholes which is impeding the delivery of the justice. The first is the political pressure. So in many public sensitive cases, such as for example the Ayodhya judgment or the Triple Talaq judgment, there lies a lot of political pressure on the judiciary to give the judgments which are actually favorable to the masses. And thus, such political pressure can actually lead to violation of the natural principle of justice, the rule of law and the equality before law which has been guaranteed under Article 14 of the Constitution. That is why very recently the Chief Justice of India actually lamented that the ruling party wants the court to endorse its policies and the opposition wants the court to fight their battles. You can quote this in your mains answers as well. The second issue is the kangaroo court. So because of this political and public pressure which is being exerted on the court, it ultimately leads to the creation of kangaroo courts or the trials by the media, where the outcome of the judgment is already predetermined, and it ultimately creates pressure on the judges which are not secluded from the larger society to give the judgments obviously in the favor of the larger public opinion. The third is that because of this huge political and public pressure, ultimately it transpires to the delay in critical cases. For example, even the landmark ruling of the Supreme Court recently, where it declared the electoral bond scheme unconstitutional, it came 6 years after the launching of the scheme. So it actually provided a lot of impetus or a lot of scope for a lot of corruption which could have taken place under the scheme. That can also be said for the recent allegations which has been put against the Adani and the kind of investigation which is required into that. Then there are several infrastructural challenges which impede the justice delivery. The first is, let's say, look at the judicial officers which exist across the country. So that is 24,280. And look at the court halls which are actually available for them to deliver this justice. That is 20,140, including 620 of the rented halls. 26% of these court complexes, they do not have any separate ladies toilet. 5% only have any kind of medical facilities. 32% only have any separate record rooms. And 27% have a computer on the judge's dais. Then there is much bigger issue of the vacancies which lies in our judiciary. So for example, if you look at the high courts, there are 25 high courts in our country. The sanctioned strength is currently around 1,140, while the working strength is only 770, leading to the huge vacancy of 340. Very recently, the Supreme Court has been able to fulfill all of its vacancies. Also a question here. Can you guys tell me that who is actually responsible for sanctioning of the strength of high court judges and Supreme Court judges? Just comment that down. Now, because there is a huge vacancy and such infrastructural shortage, obviously that will transpire to what? That will transpire to huge pendency of cases. Just look at the staggering number of cases which are pending in High Court, more than 60 lakhs, and more than 80,000 cases which are pending in the Supreme Court. Out of the 60 lakhs, keep this in mind that there are 25% of the cases which are actually being pending for more than 25 years. Imagine someone has committed some crime against you and you are going to the court 25 years later to ask for the justice. Then there is, let's say for example, all these issues or this pendency of cases could have been dealt if we would have actually been strategically utilizing the alternate dispute resolution systems, as for example the Gram Nyayalayas or the Lok Adalat, etc. But just look at the number of meager courts which has been created in various states, such Gram Nyayalayas under the Gram Nyayalaya Act of 2008, and the number of cases which it has disposed. Also, another major issue which was highlighted today by the Chief Justice of India, that is the inequality of representation or the underrepresentation of women in the judiciary, where the percentage of women judges in High Court is currently 12%, and out of 34 sanctioned strength, only 4 women are currently Supreme Court judges. Keep this in mind that since our independence till today, we do not have any woman Chief Justice of India. So, to tackle with all these issues, what the government has done? First of all, the government launched National Mission for Justice Delivery and Legal Reforms 2011, under which for the development of infrastructure, till now 913 crore rupees has been sanctioned. Then the government has taken a mission mode to actually fulfill the vacancies. So various judges which has been recommended by the Supreme Court and the collegium system, that has been actually being appointed in a fast-paced manner. So 769 judges were appointed in the High Court between 2014 and 22. Then the government also created National Judicial Infrastructure Authority to further enhance the infrastructure of the courts. For that purpose, the government also launched the e-courts project to make the courts technologically sound. So all these courts, the High Courts, the Supreme Courts, they were provided with wide area network connectivity. Then there was creation of a National Judicial Data Grid for further exchange and cooperability among these courts. 21 virtual courts has been created in 17 states and union territories. Then, to deal specifically with the pendency of cases, the government under the National E-Governance Plan has launched for e-filing of the cases. The earlier committee has been created in High Court to clear the cases which have been pending for more than 5 years in a very fast-paced manner. Also, for the same purpose, the Supreme Court has created E-Committee of Supreme Court, which is actually using artificial intelligence for listing of the cases, specifically those cases which are pending for a long period of time. Then, to further enhance the accessibility of justice to the larger public, there are several steps which has been taken technologically, such as, for example, SUAS platform has been created for translation of judgments in the regional language for the larger dissemination of information among the public. The second is SUPACE for the digital drafting of the judgments, and the FASTER for the transfer of e-records for the bail. So, let's say the bail has been granted by the court, but the order has not reached to the jail authority. So, such faster transmission can take place through the FASTER application. Now, what are the steps which are taken and was suggested by the Chief Justice of India in the news article which has been published today? So, the CJI has put impetus that the legal education shall now be provided in the regional languages. And he said that the judgments of the Supreme Court, they are already being translated in the scheduled languages, the 22 scheduled languages which we have. And he said that now the impetus shall be provided on district judiciary to provide further enhanced level of judgments, calling it the backbone of the judicial system in the country. He also said that the citizens shall be provided with affordable legal representation and awareness about their statutory rights. And he said that the women representation, he said that the court is working in that direction, because if you look at the recent appointments which has been taken place at the position of civil judge, lot of them has been the women. For example, 58% of the total recruitment of civil judge in Rajasthan were actually women. So these are the steps which has been taken by the government. The suggestions of CJI has been incorporated. On the basis of this, try to solve this particular question and we move forward to the next news. The government of India has enhanced expenditure under its semiconductor mission to compete at a global stage. In this backdrop, we will try to understand the status of chip making in our country and why there is so much impetus to become self-reliant in this industry, which forms an important component of your GS3 paper under the larger theme of industrial policy and growth and development. Let's first try to understand what is semiconductor and why it is important. With the invention of semiconductor back in 1920s and 30s, we as a human actually got access to large scale innovations made possible. To understand that, for example, if you guys are watching this lecture currently on your mobile and laptops, those mobile and laptops are being run on this very semiconductor chips. Or for a large scale example, let's say about the landing of Chandrayaan-3, which landed on the south pole of the moon on 23rd of August 2023, thus making our country the 4th country in the world to achieve landing on the moon and the 1st country in the world to actually achieve landing on the south pole. That satellite was also functioning on this very same semiconductor chips. Semiconductor is basically a material which has got electrical conductivity or flow of electrons between a conductor and an insulator. Conductors such as, for example, silver and copper, and insulators such as, for example, glass and diamond. Diamond being the best insulator of electricity. Now I know you guys might be having a question that when we have got such a good conductor like silver and copper, why we are using this semiconductor? Because of the two uses which it offers to us. The two uses being that, first of all, with semiconductors, we can actually control the flow of charge carriers or the electrons without any loss of electricity. The second being that with these semiconductors, it is possible to have a unidirectional flow of current. To understand that, let's say if you are charging your mobile, so you put the charger in the socket. Now there is only unidirectional flow from the socket to your mobile. However, just imagine that if such unidirectional flow was not possible in the conductors, there was a bidirectional flow. What that could have led to? That could have actually led to the loss of energy from your mobile to the charger socket as well. Thus, your mobile would not have charged so easily and so fast. Thus, we use such semiconductors such as, for example, silicon, germanium, gallium arsenide, etc. which offers to us various kind of benefits, such as it can be operated immediately. It is compact and portable like your mobile. It has low operating voltage and it has longer lifespan and it is less expensive as well. However, when it comes to such semiconductor chip manufacturing in our country, we actually lag behind the increasing global powers such as, for example, China and USA. Just look at the key players in the global semiconductor industry, which is actually dominated in the overall value chain by US 38%, South Korea 16%, Japan 14% and China 9%. Do you find our country's name anywhere? Even in the share in consumption, US leads at 25, China leads at 24, Europe leads at 20% and India is one among the other countries here as well. If we look at the data provided to us by Statista, where the most chips will be manufactured in the future, it says that it is going to be manufactured in China, Taiwan, Japan and South Korea. India not even featuring in this. Or if you are talking about the balance of payment in this lecture quite often. So just you know that the kind of trade deficit which we have with China. What are the major items which we import from China? Just look here. They are electronic integrated circuits and microassemblies, your semiconductor diodes, transistors and other semiconductor devices. So don't you think that to tackle with all these issues, we need to achieve self-sufficiency in this? And for that purpose, the government has launched the National Semiconductor Mission, which has featured in today's news. What the government is done? First of all, the mission has been launched under the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. For what? For the development of semiconductor and display manufacturing units, under which the government is going to establish 3 fabrication units, the first of which is being created in Dholera, Gujarat by Tata and it has partnership with a Taiwanese company. The second is going to be in Morigaon, Assam and another one in Sanad, Gujarat. Also, a kind of a testing, manufacturing and processing unit will be created in Assam. The news highlights today that how in the second phase of the scheme, in the chip making policy, the funding has been further increased now to $15 billion from the earlier $10 billion. And the Tata is creating the first commercial fabrication plant in Dholera, Gujarat. So keep this in your mind. With this, we move forward to the next news, where the Indian Association for Cultivation of Science has discovered a new target for killing cancer cells with potential to discovery of various new therapies for the treatment of cancer, which forms an important component of your GS3 paper under the theme of biotechnology. What is cancer? Cancer is basically a disease in which the various kind of degraded cells in our body, they starts multiplying and ultimately impacting the other healthy cells of our body, leading to the development of tumor and ultimately decreasing the immunity of our body. Now just look at the normal cells here, how the cells starts becoming abnormal and then it divides rapidly and then it divides and blood vessels they develop forming a cancer. Now in some cases these abnormal cancer cells they can also spread to other parts of the body through the blood or lymphatic vessels. This process is called as metastasis. Keep this in mind. Now, what is the status of cancer in the world? For that, we are going to refer to the Global Burden of Cancer Report 2022 released by World Health Organization, which stated that cancer was responsible for 20 million new cases in 2022 and it ultimately caused 9.7 million deaths. Our country was responsible for 23% of the global death caused due to cervical cancer. Worldwide, the most common cause of cancer is, or the form of cancer is lung cancer, contributing to 12.4% of the total new cases. In India, there was registering of 14 lakh new cases in the very same year of 2022. And what is the most common form of cancer in our country? That is breast cancer, with contributing to 13.6% of all the patients. Now, when we have understood this status, let's try to see that what the new discovery is all about. So normally what happens that cancer cells they start developing resistance to any kind of treatment by using intrinsic DNA repair mechanism. Currently the anti-cancer drugs they target a molecule called as TOP1 which is involved in the DNA replication and transcription. Now while drugs that target this TOP1 it disrupts its activity leading to the death of cancer cell. However, the cancer cell they activate their repair mechanism to counteract this drug effect. So what the new research has found that we can target another protein called as CDK1, and we can use this and combine it with TDP1 enzyme, and that can lead to anti-cancer therapeutics. So remember this CDK1 protein which is being in the news to kind of create various kind of anti-cancer therapies. And we move forward to the next section of the news, where we are going to cover some interesting news which can actually help you to eliminate some important statements in your prelims examination. The first is about the Gaza Strip. The Gaza Strip is basically the smaller of two Palestinian territories, the other being the West Bank. It borders Egypt, Israel and your Mediterranean Sea. Till 1948, this particular region was actually being controlled by the Egypt. However, it was lost to the occupation of Palestinians, because the Palestinians, when this Arab-Israeli war took place in 1948, they fled and they occupied this particular region. In 1967, in the Six-Day War, in which ultimately Israel came out as victorious, so Israel occupied this particular region. However, from the Oslo Accords of 1995, a kind of a Palestinian authority was established in this particular region. However, it was toppled by the Hamas. The Hamas is kind of the Islamic anti-resistance organization which is trying to control this particular region currently, and it is in constant warfare with the Israel. So remember this Gaza Strip, and also try to solve this particular question if possible and comment your answers. The second news is actually about the Pacific Island Forum. The Pacific Island Forum is basically an intergovernmental organization which was created in the year of 1971, and it has got 18 member states which are located in the Pacific Ocean, such as for example your Cook Island, your Samoa Island, your Tuvalu, Solomon Island, or for example Tonga, where the fourth round of negotiations is currently taking place. What is the aim of this Pacific Island Forum? The aim is to promote economic growth, political governance and security in this particular region. Also just note down this map. This map is very important because it shows to you the various fragmentation which occurs there, such as for example Micronesia, Polynesia, Melanesia, etc. and see which countries are part of which particular point. Then the current negotiation is actually about the Pacific Resilience Facility, where these small island states, also including the larger states like New Zealand, they are asking for the funds for climate action. The third news is about the forever chemicals. What are forever chemicals? The forever chemicals, which are basically short for per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, they are the chemicals which are used in the products, such as for example non-stick cookware, food packaging, stain resisting carpeting, etc. They are called as forever chemicals because they can take up to 10 or 1000 years to break down by the nature. Now what impact do these forever chemicals has on us? It can lead to your kidney and cancers. It can lead to high blood pressure. It can decrease the vaccine response in children. So there are various health issues associated with these forever chemicals. Remember that these forever chemicals are called as your per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. Moving forward to the last news of the day, which talks about the Thanjavur's Veena. Now this Thanjavur is actually a hub for making Veena. This Veena, the musical instrument, is also mentioned in your Rig Veda. And in Natya Shastra, which has been written by Bharat Muni, it states that this Veena was actually invented by the Narad Muni. The Veena is also in our country the first musical instrument to get the geographical indication tag. Now there are 4 types of Veena which are created in our country. The first 2 are specifically related to your Hindustani music or the northern side music, that is your Rudra and Vichitra. The next 2 are Saraswati and Chitra, which are much more related to your Carnatic music. Remember that Thanjavur is the only place in our country where the Saraswati Veena, closer to the Carnatic music, is actually made. So remember these interesting points about Thanjavur's Veena. And with this, we have reached to the end of our discussion today. Do not forget to attempt the questions at the end of the video and test your knowledge. We will meet in a very interesting discussion very soon. Till then, all the very best for your preparation and thank you.